Hey everyone, I'm Jackson Jack Harris, and right now I'm standing backstage at my own graduation ceremony at UT Austin, staring at a mirror, tugging at the sleeve of my cap and gown, and feeling the same knot in my chest I've felt for as long as I can remember. Ever since I was 7, my biggest milestones. School plays, test days, birthdays, even college graduation have been overshadowed by my parents dropping devastating news right when I least expect it. It's like clockwork. The moment I should be smiling, they deliver a blow that rips the spotlight away from me and onto their own crisis. Today should be my proudest hour. My acceptance email for a Google internship is queued up in my pocket, ready to change my life. But instead, I'm running through the same horror movie in my head. What heartbreak are they going to serve me on a silver platter today? I grew up in a mid-century bungalow on a quiet street in North Austin where my dad, Robert Harris, was always glued to his phone, juggling crises as the HR director at a fast-growing tech startup, and my mom, Emily Harris, spent her days crafting press releases for a nonprofit. They were the picture of the modern American couple juggling careers and kids, yet somehow they never learned how to deliver bad news without weaponizing it against my own big moments. When I was 7, I was cast as the lead in our elementary school's rendition of The Wizard of Oz, and 20 minutes before the curtain rose, they pulled me aside to tell me that my great-grandmother was dying. I can still feel the brick-cold fear in my stomach, the swell of tears blurring the bright stage lights, and the embarrassment as I forgot every line, every cue. Instead of applause, I got pity, and I vowed then that I would never again let them see me falter. By the time I was 9, I was bracing for it. I'd been anxious about the standardized assessment for my learning differences and ADHD diagnosis that my parents treated like a family shame. On the ride home from school, before I had unbuckled my seatbelt, Dad told us he'd lost his job 3 weeks ago. He'd known, but he'd been waiting for the right moment, which apparently was never a good moment for me. The news sent our household into a spiral of budget cuts, whispered arguments, and the gnawing suspicion that my very existence was a burden. I began to believe they thought my brain worked against us, that my attention span was some extra weight around their necks. Turning 10 should have been another joyful occasion. But that's when they told me they'd put my dog Baxter down 2 days earlier. They hadn't wanted him to be at Grandma's house for fear he'd run loose during the party, so they let him stay home until the last minute and then euthanized him. I spent my birthday blowing out candles over an empty lawn surrounded by half-hearted laughter and forced birthday cake. I never got to say goodbye to my best friend. The next time I let myself hope for anything, my 15th birthday, when I dreamed of a surprise party, Mom casually announced she and Dad were getting a divorce. One day, I was the center of a celebration. The next, I was the unintentional audience for the end of their marriage. Now, here I am at 21, clutching an hourglass my grandma gave me when I left for college, a tiny glass test of time, each grain a memory I can't get back. I keep it in my backpack, its black sand ticking away whenever I feel my heart start to race. It's supposed to remind me to seize my moments before they slip through my fingers, but that's easier said than done when your own parents have trained you to expect the other shoe to drop. Near this hourglass, I've carried a broken candle, a remnant of my first theater performance when the prop candle malfunctioned. The flame flickered, the wax dripped erratically, and just like that, the scene fell apart. I kept that candle stub to remind myself that even in chaos, there's a lesson: beauty can survive cracks if you let it. This year, instead of hiding behind my usual silence, I started a blog and a Reddit account, Clockwork Breakdown, to chronicle every instance I can remember of my special days hijacked by terrible news. I'm no longer the kid who swallows his tears and trudges on. I'm using my story to connect with others who've been emotionally battered by the people who should ought have been their safe harbor. My sister Emma, 19, has been my secret ally. She records every awkward announcement, transcribes the exact words, and forwards them to our campus counselor, Dr. Rachel and Gwen. My younger brother Liam, 17, sends me daily messages of encouragement, reminding me that I deserve respect and empathy. And my friend Marcus Lee, a fellow computer science major, has quietly collected signatures from classmates demanding a student-led forum on compassion and communication. It's a small revolution, but it's mine. Yet despite building this community of allies, I'm still paralyzed by the thought of confronting my parents today. They think I'm just another college kid caught up in first-world problems until they see me walk across that stage. I know they're like hiding something. Huge tensions at Dad's startup have been escalating, and Mom's been stretched thin managing a PR crisis for her nonprofit. I suspect they've been saving their breakdowns for my milestones because they don't want me to drop out and move back home to care for Mom. It's twisted logic, but it makes their behavior feel almost empathetic in its own way. Almost. It doesn't erase the damage, though. So as I adjust my tassel and take a breath, I'm bracing for the worst. Will they choose today the day I've dreamed about for a decade to reveal that mom's cancer has returned? Or maybe they'll tell me the company is folding and they need me to come back and help pay the bills. Part of me wants to rush the stage, grab the mic, and demand, why now? But another part, my newly forged inner steel, tells me to hold my ground. I will not let them hijack this moment, not this time. I hear my name echoing through the hall. My heart pounds not with joy, but with the old familiar dread. I step forward, the hourglass tapping faintly in my pocket, the broken candle stub pressing against my thigh. The lights are blinding. The crowd is a sea of faces. I grip the diploma cover like a shield, and I prepare to face whatever bomb they've stashed for me, ready to stand up, to speak out, to claim this day as my own, no matter the cost. And then, silence. The dean raises his voice, Jackson Harris. My breath catches. My pulse surges. I step out into the glare of expectation, and I realize this is the first time in my life I'm walking toward my future instead of running from my past. But as I look into the audience, I spot them. Dad's shoulders slumped. Mom's eyes glossy, and I know the real twist is about to come. I'm still standing on that stage, diploma in hand, heart pounding as the applause washes over me like waves I'm not sure I deserve. But before I can step down, before I can even let the dean finish that hollow platitude about the bright futures awaiting our graduates, I spot my sister Emma in the front row camera, poised, her eyes locked on mine. It's almost like she's daring me to do it, daring me to rip off the bandage and expose every scar I've spent a lifetime hiding. And I realize that spotlight isn't just for me anymore. It's for all the moments they stole, all the celebrations they hijacked, and for every person out there who's been silenced by the people who were supposed to lift them up. I take a breath and let the auditorium's hush settle in. My palms are slick against the smooth wood of the diploma cover. I glance down at the hourglass tucked into my pocket. The black sand has settled into a jagged line as if frozen by my decision. I know the rules. Once I speak, there's no turning back. But I also know that if I don't say something, I might spend the rest of my life regret posting on Reddit forever, hiding behind a username, never finding the courage to look my parents in the eyes. So I slide my hand out, flip the hourglass upside down, and let gravity decide the next few minutes of my life. Wait, I say, voice echoing in the sudden silence, and I hold up a finger as the dean blinks in surprise. My chest tightens. This isn't just my moment. I can feel a ripple through the crowd, that brief thrill when people realize protocols are about to be broken. It's every kid who's had their big day overshadowed by someone else's crisis. It's every person who's ever sat in their seat wondering, why not me? I fish the broken candle stub from my pocket and hold it aloft like a makeshift scepter. This candle was supposed to light my big scene in middle school, but the wick messed up and the whole play fell apart. I kept it because it reminded me that sometimes, even when things crack, the flame can still burn. I pause, letting the weight of those words sink in. I'm acutely aware of my dad's face in the crowd, Robert Harris, looking smaller than any CEO should. My mom's eyes are red-rimmed, her lips pressed into a thin line as she shifts uncomfortably. I'd expected anger tears, maybe even walking out. Instead, there's shame. And shame is a far more potent weapon than rage. I've spent my whole life waiting for the other shoe to drop. I've been told about job losses, family illnesses, breakups, deaths, all dropped into my lap like grenades when I should have been celebrating. I thought I was alone until I found other stories on Reddit stories that sounded just like mine. So tonight, on the day I should be most proud, I refuse to let my voice be stolen again. I take a shaky breath and set the candle stub on the edge of the podium. It wobbles but doesn't fall. If my parents want to tell me the world is ending, they can do it another day. Tonight I'm taking my time back. The auditorium explodes into mixed reactions. Gasps, nervous laughter, the shuffle of feet. I step away from the podium, clutch my diploma, and head for the aisle, the hourglass rattling in my pocket like a drumbeat. Down in the aisle, Marcus Lee is waiting with his phone, live streaming every moment, the view count already climbing into 5 digits. Liam jumps to his feet, fist pumping, while Emma's camera light blazes bright. It hits me then that I'm not just walking off a stage, I'm walking past every expectation that ever tried to box me in. Once I clear the crowd and step outside into the cool Texas night, I pull out my phone. Dad calls. With a racing heart, I answer. Jackson, he says, voice low. What the hell was that? I realize then that I haven't felt fear like this since I was 7, when I froze on stage in that school auditorium. But this time I'm not shrinking. I straighten my shoulders. Dad, I'm tired of the grenades. We need to talk when you're ready to have a real conversation, not just dump your problems on me. He doesn't reply. I hang up, slip the hourglass into my back pocket, and look at the broken candle stub in my hand. It's scarred and chipped, but the wick is still intact. That's when I know I'm ready. ready to rebuild the flame on my own terms, ready to let the shards of my past become the foundation of something stronger. Behind me, the campus lights of UT Austin glow like a constellation guiding me forward. But as I start down the street toward Emma's car, I feel something tug at the back of my mind, a fear that maybe, just maybe, my parents won't come around. That maybe I've burned this bridge beyond repair. And in the quiet hum of traffic and distant cheers, I realize the real choice isn't about mustard seeds of hope or grains of sand in an hourglass. It's about whether I'm brave enough to keep turning it, knowing the next turn could be my last. And so I step into the night, the broken candle stub in my fist, the hourglass ticking away my future, and I don't glance back. Because some moments you either seize or watch slip through your fingers. Tonight, I've chosen to seize mine, but I still wonder, will they be there when I finally let that candle burn bright? I slide into the passenger seat of Emma's beat-up Honda Civic, the engine rumbling as she peels away from the campus quad. The night air is warm, heavy with the scent of bluebonnets blooming along the sidewalks, and my heart still races from the storm I left behind on that stage. Emma glances at me through the rearview mirror, her eyes soft but determined. "Where to?" she asks. I twist the broken candle stub between my fingers, its charred wick a talisman of every moment that tried to burn me down. Home, I say, though I'm not sure which home I mean anymore. We drive in silence through the streets of North Austin, the glow from street lamps painting our reflections on storefront windows. I watch the city pass by, late-night taco trucks serving travelers, clusters of students laughing on porches, neon signs buzzing like restless fireflies. Everything seems alive, pulsing with possibility, and yet I feel weighted by the question I whispered to myself just minutes ago: will my parents be there when I finally let that candle burn bright? When we pull into the driveway of our childhood house, I hesitate. The porch light casts long shadows across the lawn, and I can almost see the ghosts of every ruined birthday, every crushed milestone swirling in the dark. Emma sits still, giving me space, but I catch her foot tapping on the floor. I open the car door, the house looming before me like a relic I'm not sure I'm ready to face. I grip the candle stub and the hourglass in my jacket pocket tools of my small revolution and step onto the front porch. Inside, the house smells the same faint trace of Dad's cologne mixed with Mom's lavender candle, as if they haven't noticed my absence at all. The living room light flickers, and there they are, Robert and Emily Harris, standing awkwardly by the framed diplomas on the wall. Dad's suit jacket is draped over a chair. Mom's holding a glass of red wine in one hand, a trembling tissue in the other. They look lost. Not angry, not exactly relieved, just unsure how to fill the space I left open between us. I clear my throat. "Hi," I say, and my voice sounds small in the cavern of that familiar room. They blink like waking from a dream. Emma stands behind me, arms folded, but she doesn't say a word. I realize I'm the one carrying the weight now, all the hurt, the anger, the flicker of hope that maybe they'll finally understand. Dad steps forward first. His voice is low, almost guttural. "Jackson, what were you thinking on stage yesterday? You embarrassed us." I swallow the urge to remind him who ruined whose moment all those years. Instead, I let the hourglass slip into my hand. "I was thinking that for too long you've decided my milestones weren't important enough to protect. You've treated my life like your announcement schedule. I'm done with that." Mom's eyes fill with tears, and she sets her wine glass on the coffee table with a clink that sounds like the first domino falling. "We were protecting you," she says, voice quivering. "We're the parents. When something bad happens, we figure it's better to tell you early on so you're prepared." I feel a flash of anger, hot and sudden. Prepared, I step forward. Prepared doesn't mean in the middle of my Lincoln Center competition. It doesn't mean 5 minutes before I pitch to Google. Prepared means we sit down at dinner, look you in the eyes, and say, "There's something we need to talk about." Not drop it like a bomb on the one day I shouldn't have to worry about anything but my own joy. They look chastened, embarrassed emotions I've rarely seen on their faces. But as I watch them, I realize this confrontation, this risk I've taken, has stripped away their armor. The power dynamic has shifted. For the first time, I see them not as omnipotent gatekeepers of truth, but as flawed human beings balancing secrets and insecurities, just like me. I reach into my jacket pocket and pull out the broken candle stub. The charred wick points at them like an accusing finger. "This candle is the only prop I kept from middle school. I thought I'd forgotten why, but last night it hit me. It's a symbol. You tried to extinguish my flame every chance you got, but even in its broken state, the candle still has the power to light a stage. I kept it because I wanted you to know I'm not afraid of the cracks. I can still burn." Emily's lip trembles and she lifts her hand to her mouth. Robert's jaw works like he's chewing on a secret he can't swallow. Then Mom steps forward, eyes glossy. Jack, we never meant to hurt you. She pauses, searching my face. It's just when your great-grandma was sick, we didn't know how to tell you gently. When Dad lost his job, we didn't want to ruin your test day. When Baxter got sick, we thought sparing you any embarrassment would be kinder. I see now it was selfish. We were thinking of our own guilt, not your feelings. Her confession hangs in the air, fragile as a flickering flame. Part of me wants to scream to tell her that sorry is too little too late. But another part, the part I've been nurturing, the part that believes in second chances, softens. I consider the hourglass in my hand, the black sand still falling. Time isn't reversed by apologies, but maybe it can be bent forward to something new. Mom, I say quietly, it's not just about apologies, it's about how we move on. You held back truth thinking you were protecting me, but all you did was teach me to expect betrayal at the worst possible time. I need to know that going forward, you'll find a better way. I look at Dad. And you, I need to know you respect my milestones as much as your own crises. Because I have crises too, and they deserve to be heard. Robert nods, his shoulders slumping like he's shedding a suit that no longer fits. You're right, he says, voice raw. We messed up. We were afraid you'd bail on us if we burdened you. But we forgot that you're not a child anymore. We should have treated you like an adult. He glances at my diploma on the coffee table. Your internship, we're proud of you. We should have celebrated, not overshadowed. The words are humble, awkward, but genuine. For the first time in my life, their confession isn't a weapon pointed at me, it's a bridge reaching toward me. I set the candle stub on the table between us, then place the hourglass next to it. The black grains are settling into their final formation, a silhouette of a shattered heart. I realize the symbols aren't just mine, they belong to all of us now, broken and beautiful. Before the silence can stretch too long, Emma steps forward and presses play on her phone. We watched together the live stream of my speech, my defiant stance on that stage. The moment I flipped the hourglass, the crowd's stunned reaction. I see the thousands of comments flooding in messages of solidarity, of shared pain, of hope. Marcus's face flashes on screen as he grins behind his camera. Liam jumps up in the crowd, fist raised. And there in the front row are Mom and Dad, pale but present, eyes fixed on me with something that looks a lot like pride. Mom reaches out and touches my arm. We want to make it right, she says. Dad nods. Emma and Liam flank me, a united front I never thought I'd see. I feel a warmth spread through my chest, mingling with the fierce adrenaline still coursing through my veins. It's not perfect. The house is still full of ghosts, the shadows of every ruined moment. But we've ignited something new, a fragile spark of understanding, a promise to rebuild. I glance at the hourglass and the candle stub symbols of crack and flame, time and endurance, and I realize the next chapter of this story begins now. They've acknowledged their mistakes, but the real work lies ahead, learning to communicate, to respect each other's vulnerabilities, to share burdens instead of hoarding guilt. We'll need more than apologies. We'll need action, consistency, and a willingness to be honest, sometimes painfully honest with each other. As I stand there, surrounded by my family and the echoes of my own defiance, I know this moment is a hinge. The house once felt like a trap. Now it feels like a workshop for our new lives. We've torn down the old script, but the pages of the next one are blank. My heart pounds with anticipation and a flicker of fear because uncharted territory is both thrilling and terrifying. And then I sense the tug, a lingering doubt at the edge of my mind. Will this breakthrough last, or will we slip back into old patterns when the next crisis hits? Can a single act of defiance reshape a lifetime of dynamics? The candle stub on the table seems to smolder in its disappointment, and the hourglass sits half empty, half full, whispering that time will tell. I take a cautious step back, my eyes locked on theirs, and I realize that this is both an ending and a beginning. We've crossed a threshold, but the real journey has just begun. And as the night deepens outside these windows, I can't help but wonder, are we strong enough to keep turning the hourglass together, grain by grain, until every crack is sealed, and every flame burns brighter than ever? The answer glimmers somewhere in the dark, waiting for us to find it. I wake before dawn, the pale light of Austin filtering through the slatted blinds and painting stripes across my bedroom wall. My phone buzzes with notifications, hundreds of comments on last night's livestream, messages from strangers thanking me for speaking up, friends reaching out to share their own stories. I lie still for a moment, listening to the quiet hum of the city, waking up feeling a surge of something unfamiliar, yet electric hope. Then I remember the meeting Mom scheduled for today at her nonprofit office, the one where she swore she'd introduce me as the family success story, and my heart clenches. I grasp the broken candle stub on my bedside table, rubbing its scarred wick between my thumb and forefinger. It's become more than a keepsake. It's my talisman of resilience, proof that light can survive even the most chaotic flame. I throw back the covers and head downstairs where Dad is sipping coffee in the kitchen, eyes bloodshot but alert. He greets me with a tentative nod, no fatherly hug, no business chatter. There's an awkwardness in the air, thicker than the aroma of Mrs. Patel's morning cinnamon rolls cooling on the counter. Mrs. Patel, our elderly neighbor, is perched at the kitchen table, her silver hair tied neatly in a bun, her expression a mixture of pride and concern. She brought the rolls and the morning paper, an unspoken gesture of solidarity. I see Mom's framed news clippings on the wall celebrating her latest fundraising gala. Today's front page highlight of my graduation, Defiance, rests beside them. I thought we'd start fresh, Dad says, lifting his mug and a half toast. We're proud of you, Jack. His voice wavers on the last word. I nod, forcing a smile that feels too tight for my face. Thanks, I manage, but my gut tightens with unease. Fresh starts sound good in theory, in practice they demand more than words. I glance at Mom across the table, her eyes shy, hopeful, and I realize she's waiting for me to say something. Some sign that I'm ready to let last night fade into a distant headline. But I'm not ready for that either. I appreciate it, I say, finally leaning forward. But things can't just go back to normal. We need to set some ground rules. I watch Dad's shoulders stiffen. Mom's fork hovers midair. First, I continue, no more ambush announcements. If you have something serious to share, health issues, financial troubles, you pick a time, we sit down and we talk about it. Not right before my performance, not on my birthday, not during my internship interview. We agree on that. I feel the authority in my own voice, a bulwark against the old dynamics. They both nod, hesitant but sincere. Second I go on, I need space to build my own life without feeling guilty every time I want to celebrate something good. I'm in Austin now. I have friends, a future, a career path. I want you to support that, not sabotage it. I'm not asking for permission. I'm demanding respect. Mom's lip trembles and she sets her fork down. You have it, she whispers. Dad reaches across and touches my hand. The gesture is tentative but real. I stand and walk to the living room, crossing the rug my grandmother crocheted decades ago, each stitch a memory of family and tradition. I pick up the hourglass still perched beside the broken candle stub and let it flip in my hands. The black sand trickles down each grain, a promise. Time, I murmur, to rebuild. I look back at them. I want us to start with honesty. No more secrets. Mom and Dad exchange a glance, the weight of past mistakes in their eyes. I almost believe this could work. But as I gather my things to leave for Mom's office, my phone buzzes again. A DM from a Reddit user who says they're organizing a support meetup for people whose families trigger special day trauma. The idea makes my chest tighten. What if, by speaking out, I've created a movement I can't control? What if I become the very spectacle I fought against? I tuck the phone away, but the worry lingers. Outside, the Austin sunrise glows warm and relentless. I breathe it in, the scent of fresh cement and wildflowers mixing with distant traffic. I'm about to step into Mom's world of meetings and photo ops, a place where gratitude speeches and PR spin reign supreme. I steel myself, clutch the hourglass, feel the weight of every grain sliding toward an unknown future. As I walk to the car, I glance back at the house, at the broken candle stub and the hourglass side by side in the living room. They're symbols of fracture and endurance, of time slipping and moments reclaimed. I realize that today's challenge isn't just about setting rules or homecoming peace talks. It's about confronting the deeper fear that maybe some wounds can't fully heal, that some patterns are too ingrained to break with mere promises. And so I step into the morning light. Each footfall a question, can hope truly outlast the cracks? Will our newfound honesty survive the next crisis? The answers lie ahead, in the rooms and boardrooms where my mother's nonprofit thrives and where my future career begins. I take a breath and push open the car door, feeling both the thrill of possibility and the tremor of uncertainty, the next chapter still unwritten, balanced on the edge of a grain of sand. I step out of Emma's car in front of Mom's nonprofit headquarters, a sleek glass building hovering over Congress Avenue like a promise of change, and I swallow hard against the familiar tingle of doubt rolling through me. The sun is high now, turning the city into a furnace, and I feel the sweat beat at my hairline as I carry my backpack loaded with my laptop, my broken candle stub wrapped in a handkerchief, and the ever-present hourglass in my pocket. I pause at the revolving door, watching suited donors and young activists drift past, some offering me polite nods, none quite sure what to make of the kid who hijacked graduation. I breathe in, reminding myself that this is my choice to step into their world on my own terms, to reclaim the narrative. Inside, the lobby smells of polished wood and optimism, that faint tang you get when people believe they can tilt the world toward better. I check in with the receptionist, who gives me a tight smile and points me toward the conference room on the third floor. My palms are clammy as I ride the elevator, the mirrored walls reflecting the anxious set of my jaw, the way my hand brushes the hourglass inside my jacket. Time. That's the thing I've stolen back for myself, and now I need to use it wisely. When the doors slide open, I step into a tableau of earnest faces, board members, and crisp blazers interns taking notes on laptops, volunteers clutching coffee cups. In the center sits a long mahogany table, and at its head is Mom, her posture rigid as she waits. She stands when I enter, greeting me with a smile that trembles on the edge of tears and pride. The board members murmur greetings, some polite, some curious, yet I detect a frisson of expectation in the air, as though they're eager to see how the family success story will perform under real pressure. I set my bag on the floor and pull out my laptop, but my gaze drifts to the framed photos along the wall: Mom at gala fundraisers shaking hands with senators, Dad at startup launch events grinning in carefully lit snapshots. For a moment, I feel the old tug, the desire to prove myself worthy to earn their approval. But then I remember the candle stub and the hourglass, and I steel myself. Approval is a bonus, not a lifeline. Mom gestures to a seat beside her. "Thanks for coming, Jack," she says, her voice soft. "I want you to see how we operate, and maybe share some of your story." The board director, a sharp-eyed woman named Clara Jennings, nods. "We were thrilled by your speech," Clara says, voice measured. "It gave our campaign unprecedented visibility. We'd like you to speak at our upcoming charity panel, Voices of Resilience." A ripple of polite applause follows, and I feel the room's warmth like a spotlight. Speaking is my gift and my curse. I once froze under bright lights, now I'm being asked to command them. The twist of irony isn't lost on me. I nod, feeling the weight of their expectations as a new kind of pressure. "I'd be honored," I say, keeping my voice steady. Inside, my heart races. This gig could launch my career, cement Mom's reputation, or blow up spectacularly if I flinch. I remember the black sand flowing through the hourglass. When it runs out, you flip it again. Maybe this is a chance to keep turning it grain by grain, but it also warns me that time is finite. Mistakes accelerate the countdown. The board members exchange pleased glances. Mom relaxes, a flicker of relief passing over her face. I realize they've bottled me as their symbol, the kid who broke free. But symbols are fragile. They shatter if you don't handle them carefully. As the meeting proceeds, they outline their agenda: a gala, a scholarship fund, social media campaigns. They want me to front videos, sign autographs, recount my journey from trauma to triumph. I watch as they treat my story like a marketing bullet point. My chest tightens. I've already seen how narratives can be weaponized. The memory of Dad's job loss announcement on my way home from school floods me, a crisis spun for maximum shock. I glance at Mom, who's taking notes on her tablet, her face set in concentration. I know she wants redemption. I want authenticity. And I sense a conflict crackling beneath the polished veneer: their need for a compelling narrative versus my need for truth, nuance, respect for complexity. When it's my turn to speak, I lay out my conditions. I'm grateful for the platform, but I need this to be more than a photo op. I want real dialogue, people sharing how families hurt them and how they healed. No glossing over, no quick sound bites. My words hang in the air like a dare. Clara blinks, Mom presses her lips together, and someone coughs. Then Clara smiles, slow and deliberate. "We can incorporate a roundtable discussion. How about offering microgrants to participants who share their stories? We'll host an open mic segment." I nod, cautious relief trickling in. They've given me room to shape the event. Yet I feel the tension of compromise. I won't be their mascot. I'll be their co-creator. The rest of the meeting flies by in a blur of logistics, dates, venues, promotional partners. I sign on the dotted line for the panel, agree to a press release, and outline my vision for an interactive workshop on campus. As we adjourn, Mom squeezes my shoulder. "I'm proud of you," she murmurs. I search her face for sincerity, graduated from ambivalence to genuine warmth, and I find it. But just as I exhale, ready to step away, Clara clears her throat and asks, "One more thing, we've been contacted by a major local news outlet. They want an exclusive interview. They're pitching it as the graduation moment that started a movement. Will you agree to that?" I feel a chill, a movement. I wanted dialogue, not a crusade in my name. Yet I remember the Reddit user's invite to a support meetup, a community forming organically. Now it's threatened by a headline-driven narrative that could consume me. I glance at Mom, whose expression falters for the first time all morning. The PR director in her mind is battling the mother who wants me to have agency. I sense the twist logic tightening. If I refuse, they risk undermining the momentum. If I agree, I risk becoming a manufactured inspiration. The air in the conference room grows heavy, walls closing in like the auditorium where I once froze. I realize this is the crucible: authenticity versus spectacle, vulnerability versus brand. I pick up my hourglass, feeling the grains shifting under my fingers. I need time to think, I say quietly. The room stills. Mom's eyes widen. Clara's polite smile flickers. Of course, Clara says, clearing her throat, but the press deadline is today. That phrase, today, strikes me like a hammer. The old pattern: crucial news delivered at my most vulnerable moment. My pulse hammers in my ears. I glance at the broken candle stub and imagine rekindling its flame just one more time on my own terms. I stand gathering my laptop and notes. I'll get back to you by this afternoon, I say, voice firm. The final grains of sand slip through the hourglass as I turn away. In the elevator, I hold the hourglass like a compass, guiding me through the pressure, its last grain falling as the doors close. Below, the lobby's glow beckons the world waiting. I step out into the Texas heat, shoulder heavy with expectation and possibility. The nonprofit's glass facade reflects the skyline, but I'm not a reflection of their ambitions. I'm a person with scars and hopes, not a marketing hook. As I walk down Congress Avenue toward campus, I feel the weight of every decision pressing on me. How to balance my parents' redemption with my own autonomy? How to tell my story without letting it devour me? How to flip the hourglass one more time without losing track of when the sand runs out? The city pulses around me: tourists posing for photos, street musicians strumming guitars, protesters chanting for policy change near the Capitol steps. Social causes, personal stories, collective movements, all weaving into the tapestry of this place. I clutch my backpack strap, feeling the hourglass and candle stub nestled inside symbols of fragility and fire time and transformation. I know I'll respond to Clara by this afternoon. I know I'll have to navigate the media's hunger for drama, the nonprofit's need for a mascot, my parents' desire for healing. But right now in this moment, I remember why I started this journey: not to become a headline, but to find my voice steady, authentic, unafraid. The sun beats down, sweat slick on my skin, but I stand tall, heart thrumming with anticipation and fear. Ahead lies the crossroads, a media storm, a movement in the making, and the chance to reclaim my narrative once more. And as the Texas heat shimmers on the pavement, I pause at the curb, momentarily suspended between what was and what could be, the hourglass dormant in my pocket. The next move will define not only my story, but the stories of everyone who's watched me plant this flame in the dark. With a deep breath, I step forward, my shadow stretching long behind me, and I know the true test of resilience is just beginning. I step off the curb and into the roar of the city, the late afternoon sun glinting off the Texas Capitol dome ahead. My heart drums in my ears as I make my way toward the campus radio station, where I've agreed to do an impromptu interview with Ethan Brooks, the freelance journalist who first spotlighted my graduation speech. Every footstep echoes a promise: I will not let my story be commandeered. Inside the modest concrete building, I'm greeted by the hum of equipment warming up, the hiss of mics, and Ethan's easy nod from behind the soundboard. He looks up, offering a thumbs up. I swallow and drop my backpack. Inside lie the hourglass, now empty of its black grains, and the broken candle stub wrapped in last night's cloth. They're symbols of past fractures and the resilience I've claimed, but also reminders that even symbols can be repurposed, misunderstood. Ethan taps the mic. "Ready?" he asks. I nod, settling onto the stool and folding my hands. The red on-air light glows. "This is In Your Corner Radio," he says. "I'm here with Jackson Harris, Jack the grad who took the stage and refused to be silenced. Jack, tell our listeners what's next." My throat tightens. I breathe in, thinking of Mom and Dad back at the nonprofit office, balancing their own crisis of identity. I think of Emma and Liam waiting to hear my words. I think of Clara Jennings and the nonprofit board press deadlines looming like old habits. And I remember the grin on Marcus's face as he filmed my exit from the gala meeting, proof that every risk can be a stepping stone. "I want to share a truth," I begin, voice steady. "Too often we treat people as marketing hooks or cautionary tales. We package trauma into sound bites and call it empathy. But real healing comes when we sit in the discomfort, when we let the cracks be visible so we can pour light into them." I reach into my pocket and pull out the hourglass, now devoid of sand, and turn it upside down. This hourglass ran out. There was no more coal-black sand to measure my frustrations, my pain. But that emptiness isn't defeat, it's space. Space to welcome new grains, new experiences, new conversations, new honesty. Ethan leans forward. You've been offered multiple media spots, a panel at your mom's nonprofit, even a local news interview. What guides your choices? Now I pause. I refuse to let my story be weaponized. If I speak, it will be on my terms, with depth, with vulnerability, and with action. I'm launching a campus initiative called Reclaim Your Day, a series of workshops where students learn to communicate difficult news respectfully and to set boundaries around their own celebrations. It's part tech talk, part group therapy, part activism. And I'm partnering with Dr. Rachel Nguyen to ensure we have real mental health resources. Ethan nods, impressed. That's ambitious. Some might say you're biting off more than you can chew. I smile wryly. If there's anything I've learned, it's that you have to risk overload to find balance. If I stayed silent, I'd keep swallowing the chaos. Now I'm channeling it into something productive. Besides, I tap the broken candle stub on the desk, the charred wick clicking softly against the wood. Even a damaged flame can light the way forward. Forward. Just then, Ethan's phone buzzes. He glances at it, frowns. That's Clara Jennings. She's asking for your answer on the news interview. My chest tightens. The old instinct to hide in safe protocols wars with the new, resolve to protect my narrative. I look at the listener count climbing on the station's display, the circle of red light, and realize that the microphone is no longer a threat. It's a tool. I turn back to Ethan. Tell her I appreciate the offer, but I'll reserve interviews for when I have something substantive to share, like the launch details for Reclaim Your Day. Ethan nods, updates her with a text. Brave move, he says. I shrug, thinking of the pressure that threatened to swallow me at every turn. The spontaneous announcements on my biggest days, the relentless ticking of that hourglass. I'm done running, I say. If this movement grows, I want it to be authentic, not a product. If people tune in, it's because they want real change, not a feel-good headline. The interview winds down. Ethan thanks me, flips the on-air light off, and I step back into the hallway, the din of campus life washing over me. I feel lighter, as if walking off a stage again, only this time with a script I've written myself. Outside, Emma is waiting, camera in hand. Liam jogs up behind her. They flank me like bookends, solid and real. How was it? Emma asks. I reach into my pocket and hold out the hourglass still turned. It's my time to fill, I say. Liam pumps his fist. Let's do it. We head toward the student union, where the first Reclaim Your Day sign-up table is already set up. Volunteers are arranging chairs in a circle. Posters feature an hourglass motif and the hashtag #ReclaimYourDay. My heart flutters. This is where the abstract becomes concrete, where my story becomes a shared journey. Yet as I walk down the corridor, I catch a glimpse of myself in the windows. The same kid who once froze on stage, but now standing tall, eyes bright. I feel the broken candle stub in my hand, a reminder that even shattered tools can be repurposed. But just as we reach the door, my phone buzzes again. This time, it's an email from Dad. Need to talk. Urgent. My chest tightens. Old patterns whisper that urgent means another bombshell timed to my next milestone. I glance at Emma and Liam, then at the volunteers setting up the workshop chairs. I know this conversation could change everything. It could reopen old wounds or cement our progress. The choice is mine: run back into the safe distance or face it head-on, surrounded by the community I've built. I look at their expectant faces, the hourglass tucked into my palm and the broken candle stub in my pocket. Then I slide the phone back into my pocket without checking the message. Let's get started, I say, stepping into the room and feeling the hum of energy as students file in. The door clicks shut behind me, leaving the urgent email and the past outside. Only the soft glow of the neon sign above the doorway remains as a promise. This is not the end of my story, but a new beginning. Soy 2. My name's Ethan. I'm 34 years old, a software developer who's more at ease debugging code than navigating family dinners. I own a small but profitable software firm run right from the comfort of my home, a perfect fit for an introvert like me. I'm not the life of the party. I never wanted to be. A quiet evening with a good novel and a cup of tea? That's my scene. But my wife, Claire, she's the opposite. Magnetic, warm, loud in the way that draws people in, not pushes them away. Where I blend into shadows, she shines in every room she walks into. That contrast worked for us at first. I found her warmth intoxicating. She found my calm grounding. But there was one constant wedge between us: her mother, Linda. Linda was a force. Opinionated would be putting it gently. She didn't just think she was right, she acted as if she'd been divinely appointed to set everyone straight. Her criticism didn't come as debates or arguments. No. Linda weaponized politeness, her barbs wrapped in silk and delivered with a smile so serene it made you feel crazy for being heard. But worse than her words was her presence. She was always there even when she wasn't wanted, especially when she wasn't wanted. Her visits were rarely announced, and her influence on Claire total. The cracks that would later split our family wide open started small. Little remarks at dinner, unsolicited advice on our parenting, condescending smiles when I spoke about my work. I tolerated it all because Claire was worth it, or so I believed. Then came the Bora Bora trip. I'd spent over a year planning it in secret, a once-in-a-lifetime family vacation. The works, an overwater bungalow, crystal clear lagoons, sunset dinners for Claire, for our 2 kids, and yes, for Linda too. Claire insisted she come, and I let that happen. Fast forward to 3 days before departure. I'm in the kitchen handling some last-minute logistics when Claire's phone left on the counter starts blaring on speakerphone. Linda's voice pours through, syrupy but smug. I can't wait to see Tom again. Such a lovely man. Tom. The name hit me like a brick. Claire's ex-boyfriend from college. A charming but arrogant man Linda always praised as a real catch. He'd show up in conversations far too often for my liking over the years, but we were happily married, so I brushed it off, until now. Why is your mom talking about Tom? I asked, keeping my voice even but my pulse pounding. Claire hesitated, then said quickly, Oh, she just mentioned she might meet up with him for dinner after we get back. Nothing to worry about. But there it was, the quiver in her voice I knew too well after 10 years together. Claire wasn't a practiced liar. Her voice would crack just enough when she was hiding something, and in that moment I knew. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I called the travel agent who'd helped me plan the trip. My hands trembled as I asked her to confirm the guest list for our reservation. Her reply chilled me. Yes, Mr. Grant. Your mother-in-law, Linda Walker, added a companion to the reservation, Tom Harrison. Same flight, same resort. His bungalow's been arranged right next to yours. I felt the air squeeze out of my lungs. Linda had not just invited herself deeper into my life again, but had taken the liberty of inviting Claire's ex-boyfriend on our meticulously planned family vacation. The gall of it was staggering. I said nothing to anyone that evening. I smiled over dinner. I tucked the kids into bed. I kissed Claire goodnight even as my mind raced, my thoughts sharpening with quiet resolve. By morning, I had a plan. First, I called the travel agency back and requested a partial refund, not a full cancellation, but a redirection. I moved my entire booking for myself and the kids to another destination entirely. A secluded resort in the Maldives, remote, beautiful, peaceful, and critically Linda-free. I didn't tell Claire, not yet. I didn't breathe a word to anyone. I wanted the silence to sting when it happened. Over the next 2 days, I played my part perfectly. Packed the bags, helped Claire organize sunscreen and swimwear for the kids, answered her excited questions with smiles and nods. Inside, I was done. Done playing the patient, invisible husband. Done letting my boundaries get trampled for the sake of appearances. And then the final blow landed. The night before we were scheduled to leave, Linda arrived at our house early naturally with a smug little smile, sipping tea like she already owned the weekend. As she settled into our living room, she turned to me and said, as casually as if she were commenting on the weather, I just thought it would be so lovely for Claire and Tom to reconnect on this trip, for old time's sake. Tom was such an important part of her life. The children should know him, don't you think? Claire froze her eyes wide and guilty. The kids looked up confused. And me? I smiled. A wide, calm, genuine smile. The kind that unnerves people more than any outburst ever could. You know what, Linda, I said softly. I do love a good surprise. I excused myself, walked calmly to the bedroom, took out my phone and snapped a picture of the altered itinerary, the one that no one knew about yet. Then I emailed it to myself for safekeeping. That night, while Claire and Linda laughed late into the evening, reminiscing and drinking wine, oblivious to what was about to happen, I tucked the kids into bed and kissed them on the forehead. Good night, loves, I whispered. We're going on an adventure tomorrow, just the 3 of us. And that night, for the first time in years, I felt peace. But I also felt a quiet, steely determination. Tomorrow, they would wake to a very different reality. At 5:15 a.m., I slipped out of bed. My movements were deliberate but gentle, like a man quietly withdrawing from a place he no longer belonged. Claire stirred slightly but didn't wake. Linda was fast asleep in the guest room, probably still smug from her wine-soaked victory last night. Their victory, but not for long. I padded softly into the kids' room. Time for our adventure, I whispered as I knelt beside them. Groggy but smiling, they sat up without complaint, still trusting me completely. That trust felt heavy and precious, a reminder of why I was doing this. We dressed quickly and quietly. As we tiptoed past the living room, where their suitcases were still stacked neatly by the door, I left a letter taped to the bathroom mirror. A simple letter. No yelling, no bitterness, just the truth laid bare. When you let ghosts into your marriage, don't be surprised when the living walk away. Then we stepped into the morning air, cool and still. The taxi was waiting right on time. As we pulled away from the curb, I glanced back one last time at the house where I had tried so hard to build something real. A house where I'd been erased one subtle act at a time. The flight to the Maldives felt strangely calm. The kids settled in quickly, headphones on pillows snug around their necks. I watched them as the clouds drifted below us, their innocence a fragile bubble I was determined to protect. Inside me, the storm that had raged for days was replaced by a quiet clarity. I wasn't running away in anger. This wasn't revenge, this was reclamation. A withdrawal from a game I had refused to play any longer. We landed just after sunset. The air was warm and heavy with salt. The sea glistened under a rising moon as a small boat ferried us to the resort. It was exactly as I had imagined when I first planned the trip, a secluded paradise, but this time it was just for us. As we stepped onto the wooden pier leading to our private bungalow, my daughter grabbed my hand and said, "Daddy, this is like a dream." And she was right. Except it wasn't a dream for Claire and Linda. For them, it was about to be a rude awakening. The next morning, curiosity got the better of me. I turned on my phone for a quick check-in. The notifications poured in almost instantly, over 50 missed messages from the family group chat, frantic calls, voicemail after voicemail. Claire's first text said simply, "Where are you?" Then a second. "The hotel says the reservation was canceled." "What's happening?" Linda added, her own poison cloaked in confusion. "Did you mess this up deliberately?" But it was Claire's third message that cut deepest. "Where are the children?" "Daniel, this isn't funny. You just took them." It was so typical, so predictably twisted. After everything, she still couldn't see it. Couldn't acknowledge her part in this disaster. I stared at the message for a long time before typing my reply. "They're safe. I'll explain when I'm ready." Then I turned the phone off again. Somewhere deep down, I understood the symbolism of what I was doing. For years, I had let myself be marginalized, treated as expendable, diminished quietly. My value had become invisible, my needs secondary. Even my love was conditional in their eyes, a commodity to be weighed against Linda's approval or Tom's history. That era was over. The children and I spent our days swimming in turquoise waters and eating fresh seafood under palm trees. At night, we curled up together, watching old cartoons, their laughter filling the space where my anger used to be. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever is, but it was real. And real was enough. Meanwhile, back home, or rather back in Bora Bora, chaos was unfolding exactly as I suspected it would. Friends kept me loosely informed through whispers and screenshots. It turned out Linda hadn't just invited Tom as a guest. She'd paid for his stay using my itinerary, gambling that I would never find out until it was too late. But when I redirected my portion of the payment, her plan unraveled spectacularly. The hotel wouldn't honor partial payment. Their group couldn't check in without covering the full balance. Linda couldn't afford it herself, and Tom, apparently thinking he was being whisked away to some reunion fantasy, had no intention of footing the bill. He left the same evening after an ugly shouting match in the hotel lobby. Claire was humiliated, furious. And that humiliation played out publicly. She posted a thinly veiled Instagram story, "Dream vacation ruined." "Thanks, Mom." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her, almost. But sympathy fades quickly when you've been ignored, erased, and sidelined for so long. On the 5th day, the resort's front desk handed me a note. Claire had managed to reach me through them, 5 simple words scrawled in her delicate handwriting. "Please don't give up on us." The handwriting almost undid me, almost, but not quite. I folded the note and tucked it into my pocket without responding, because the question wasn't whether I still loved her. Love had never been the problem. The real question was trust. And trust once broken isn't so easily mended. As I sat on our private deck that evening, sipping tea while the children chased each other through the soft white sand, I realized something profound. This wasn't just about the trip or Linda or even Tom. It was about years of small betrayals, a slow erosion of respect that I had tolerated in the name of harmony. Harmony I now saw was overrated. I didn't need harmony. I needed peace. And I had finally found it in this tiny slice of quiet paradise, far from passive-aggressive smiles and old ghosts. But I also knew this peace couldn't last forever. Eventually, we'd return. Questions would demand answers. Decisions would have to be made not just about my marriage, but about what kind of life I wanted going forward and what kind of man I was prepared to be. For now, though, the night air was gentle, the children were safe, and I was exactly where I needed to be. That thought held me as I watched the moon rise higher over the water. And somewhere deep inside, I sensed that the hardest part of this story hadn't even begun. The days passed in a quiet rhythm that felt almost sacred. For the first time in years, my life revolved around nothing but my children and my own breath. I wasn't filtering every decision through the lens of someone else's approval. No Claire, no Linda, no pretense. Just days of salt on our skin, sun in our hair, and nights filled with laughter under the stars. It was the sort of simplicity I hadn't realized I was starving for. But paradise I knew was temporary. It's easy to feel powerful when you're 10,000 miles away and the only noise is the ocean. Real courage isn't in the escape, it's in the return. And I knew that if I was truly going to reclaim my life, I couldn't just disappear. I had to come back on my terms. So without warning, we returned early. At 3:40 a.m., we touched down from our red-eye flight. No one was waiting at the airport. I hadn't told anyone we were coming. Instead of going home, I had arranged a short-term rental, a modest 3-bedroom cottage tucked beside a quiet lake on the edge of town. A space that was mine. Temporary, yes, but symbolic too. I wasn't returning to the house where I'd been quietly erased for years. Not yet. The kids loved it. "This is our new adventure house, right, Daddy?" my daughter asked as she helped me unpack our bags. I smiled at her innocence, at her complete trust. She didn't see this as disruption, she saw it as possibility. That was the difference between us. She hadn't learned yet what it meant to endure quiet betrayals, to absorb the small corrosive wounds of people you're supposed to trust. By noon, I sent Claire a single message. "We're back. The children are safe. I'll drop them off this weekend." Her reply was immediate and predictable. "You can't just leave like this. We need to talk, please." I didn't know Mom had invited Tom until the very last minute. I was trapped. But that was the thing, wasn't it? She had known. Even if it was late, she chose silence. And silence is a decision. Silence says, I will not protect this boundary. I will not stand next to you when it matters. For years, I had absorbed those silences like they were normal. I told myself that harmony required swallowing my discomfort. But harmony isn't peace when it's built on erasure. Friday came and I did as promised. I brought the children home, but I didn't walk in alone. I brought my younger brother Lucas with me. Lucas was many things: a teacher, a quiet thinker. But more than that, he was my anchor when my emotions threatened to cloud my judgment. He wasn't there for backup in any physical sense. He was there because I needed someone who wouldn't let me talk myself out of my own truth. When we arrived, Claire opened the door with red-rimmed eyes and arms half raised, as if expecting a warm reunion. Instead, I handed her the children's overnight bags and said simply, "Let's talk," in the kitchen. Just us. And of course, Linda was there too. Sitting in my living room as though she owned it, flipping casually through a home decor magazine, sipping coffee from one of the mugs I bought years ago on a weekend trip Claire and I once took back when we still felt like partners. She didn't even rise to greet me. She just smirked. "If you're going to accuse my daughter of something, I should be here to defend her," she said with that saccharine poison that always made my skin crawl. I didn't rise to the bait. I didn't even look at her. "No, Linda," I said, my voice calm but sharp. "You won't be joining this conversation." Lucas stayed in the doorway, silent but solid, his very presence enough to keep Linda glued to her seat, a flicker of uncertainty passing through her smug exterior. In the kitchen, Claire looked exhausted. Truly exhausted. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I didn't invite him, Ethan. I swear." It wasn't until right before we left that I realized what she'd done. I wanted to cancel, but she said she paid for it herself. She made it seem small, like nothing worth fighting over, and I didn't want to ruin the trip. Her words tumbled over themselves, half apology, half justification, and I could see her searching my face for some signal of forgiveness. But I didn't give her one. I kept my tone quiet and flat, almost gentle. "Claire, the trip was already ruined the moment you chose to stay quiet. It wasn't about Tom. It wasn't even about Linda. It was about you choosing them over us again. I didn't need you to fix it. I needed you to see it, to see what that betrayal felt like." Her head dropped, her fingers twisting together nervously. "I didn't know how to stand up to her," she whispered. And there it was. The truth she probably hadn't admitted to herself until now. I took a deep breath, feeling both tired and clearer than I'd felt in years. "You've had over a decade to figure that out, Claire, and you never did. I've protected you from your mother's influence long enough. Now I have to protect myself and the kids." Outside the kitchen window, the lake glimmered in the distance. The water had always symbolized peace to me, fluidity, freedom, possibility, but today it meant something more. It represented escape. Not from her or even from Linda, but from the version of myself who had tolerated being sidelined for so long. "I'll be keeping the kids this weekend," I said. Finally, my voice calm, unwavering. "And next weekend, too, until I decide otherwise." Claire's eyes welled up, but she didn't argue. Maybe she knew she'd already lost this particular battle. Maybe some part of her understood that the fight was no longer about the vacation. It was about a marriage that had long stopped being a partnership. As I walked out of the house, Lucas trailing silently behind me, Linda opened her mouth to speak. But before she could say anything, Lucas did something I hadn't expected. He simply placed a small manila envelope on the coffee table in front of her and said quietly, "Read that carefully, Linda, but it's from Ethan's lawyer. I suggest you respect it." Her smirk froze instantly. In that envelope was a legal notice, firm but fair. No more uninvited visits, no more financial entanglements, no more casual entitlement to my time, energy, or money. Boundaries, written in black and white. I didn't look back as I left. The children were waiting for me in the car, giggling over some inside joke. Their innocence was still intact for now, and I intended to keep it that way. As we drove back to the lake house, a thought settled in my mind, heavy and real. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Claire's apology might have been genuine. Maybe, but sincerity wasn't enough to heal what had been broken. It wasn't anger that drove me now, it was clarity. And clarity comes with responsibilities. When we reached the house, I parked the car and just sat there for a moment, staring at the calm surface of the lake. This was my new home, for now. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. The next few weeks settled into a rhythm that felt strange at first, but increasingly right. Every morning at the lake house, I'd wake to the sound of birds instead of tension. The kids ran barefoot through the dew-wet grass while I made breakfast pancakes, some days eggs on toast, others. We spent afternoons exploring the woods nearby or watching thunderstorms from the screened porch. Simple things. But after years of walking on eggshells in my own home, simplicity felt radical. The lake itself became a symbol for me. Its still surface in the early morning mirrored what I was chasing internally, a calm that wasn't dependent on anyone's moods or manipulation. But beneath that surface, I knew the water still held unpredictable depths. And so did this separation. Claire didn't stop trying. Her messages came daily at first, pleading, rationalizing, apologizing. Sometimes they came at odd hours, long paragraphs dripping with regret and nostalgia. "I never wanted to hurt you," she wrote one night. "I thought keeping the peace with my mom was keeping the peace with you too. I see now how wrong that was. But that was the problem. Claire's definition of peace had always meant my silence. My comfort was never part of the equation. Her apologies felt genuine, but sincerity without change was just sentimentality. By the third week, something in her tone shifted. The texts became fewer but sharper. "Are you punishing me, Ethan?" she asked bluntly one evening. "Is that what this is about?" I didn't respond, not because I didn't know the answer, but because the question itself revealed everything. She still saw this as a conflict between us. She still didn't understand that this was about me reclaiming myself. I focused on the children instead. They blossomed in the quiet. My daughter began painting little watercolor landscapes of the lake and the forest, each one more vibrant than the last. My son spent afternoons building elaborate forts from fallen branches and moss. Their joy felt like evidence that I was doing something right, even when doubt crept in during quiet nights. But the world outside this bubble hadn't stopped moving. I heard through mutual friends that Linda had been furious when she read the legal notice Lucas left on the table. She called it petty and overdramatic, but she'd respected it nonetheless. No unexpected visits, no sly comments. For the first time since I'd known her, Linda had been forcibly removed from the center of our lives. That absence was almost eerie. And yet I felt it wasn't permanent. People like Linda don't simply bow out, they retreat and recalibrate. The true test came on a Thursday afternoon when my phone rang. It wasn't Claire this time. It was Megan, a mutual friend, but more importantly, someone who had always kept her distance from the drama. "Ethan," she said gently, "I know this isn't my business, but I think you should know Linda's spreading stories. She's telling anyone who'll listen that you abducted the kids, that you've been unstable since the divorce, that you're manipulating Claire into isolation." The words didn't surprise me, but they still landed like a blow. The social fallout I'd quietly predicted was now in motion. The thing about people like Linda is they're adept at framing narratives, casting themselves as victims while twisting facts into weapons. "She's clever about it," Megan added. "She says it like she's concerned, like she's just worried about you." I thanked Megan for the warning and sat with that information for a long time after hanging up. Part of me wanted to confront Linda directly, to call her out publicly, to lay bare every manipulation she'd ever orchestrated. But another part of me, the part that had grown quieter and wiser these past weeks, knew better. That would be playing her game. So instead, I documented everything. I began assembling a record, screenshots of messages, copies of legal notices, even a timeline of events from before the Bora Bora disaster. Not because I wanted to fight, but because I finally understood something crucial. Boundaries don't just protect you emotionally, they also protect you legally. Every act of defiance, every new narrative Linda spun was simply more evidence. If she pushed too far, I'd be ready. The symbolism wasn't lost on me as I watched my kids run along the dock that evening. The dock itself, an edge, a boundary between land and water, between security and uncertainty, between past and future. That night, as I sat by the fire pit watching flames crackle and pop, Claire sent a different kind of message. Short, direct, vulnerable in a way I hadn't expected. I told my mother today, she wrote. Told her she's no longer welcome in our lives if she can't respect our boundaries. I told her I changed the locks on the house. She screamed at me, but I did it anyway. Ethan, I'm sorry it took me this long. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was something real. I didn't reply immediately. I didn't trust quick reactions anymore. I needed to sit with this, to weigh whether this was a moment of clarity for her or just another performance aimed at coaxing me back before the work was done. The fire flickered lower, reduced to glowing embers. In that quiet, I felt something inside me soften. Not forgiveness exactly, but the loosening of the grip. Anger had held over me for so long. For the first time, I began to wonder, was there a path forward with Claire? Could two people who'd allowed years of passive betrayal to define their marriage actually rebuild something better? Was that even possible, or was the foundation too cracked to hold anything new? I didn't know, but the question itself felt different now, less desperate, more grounded. At that moment, I realized I didn't need an answer tonight, or tomorrow. The fact that I was even asking the question honestly was a kind of progress. But I also knew this Claire's next move would matter more than any apology she could text me, and I would watch closely to see if her actions finally matched her words. A week after Claire's message about confronting her mother, the lake house felt different. Lighter somehow, not because everything was resolved, but because I no longer felt like I was clinging to a life I couldn't control. I was making choices now. Quiet, deliberate choices. Each day I woke up and asked myself, what would peace look like today? And then I tried to live just that, whether it meant an afternoon building sandcastles with my daughter, or simply sitting by the water watching the wind ripple the lake. Claire didn't rush me, which surprised me. She stopped with the texts and instead sent small signs of her own quiet work, screenshots of canceled joint accounts I didn't even know. She and Linda still shared photos showing she'd boxed up years of gifts and clutter from her mother's visits, even a video of her resetting the code to the front door, the door that Linda had always walked through uninvited. These weren't grand gestures, but they were tangible. Yet I remained cautious. People change slowly, if at all, and symbolic gestures are only the beginning. I wasn't interested in going back to what we'd had. I couldn't. I needed something entirely different if we were going to build anything at all. By the end of that week, Claire asked if we could meet, not at the house, but at a small coffee shop near where we'd first met 15 years ago. Her choice of location didn't feel accidental. It was quiet, simple, stripped of all the history that had weighed us down. We sat at a corner table by the window, each with a coffee neither of us touched much. She spoke first. I want to be honest this time, she began, her voice low but steady. When Linda brought up inviting Tom, I didn't fight it. I froze. I told myself it was harmless, that she wouldn't really go through with it. And even after I found out she had, I told myself, you'd forgive me because you always have. That sentence hung there, because you always have. It was true. I had been the one smoothing things over, pretending peace existed where only quiet resentment lived. Her honesty stung but felt essential. I never stood up to her, Claire continued. Not really. I always thought if I kept her calm, she'd eventually soften. But she didn't, and I see now that I sacrificed you and the kids in the process. I didn't interrupt her this time. I just listened, letting her words land as they would. When she finally fell silent, I said carefully, it's not just about Linda, it's about what we allowed for years. It was easy for me to blame her because she was loud about it, but you and we built a marriage where my discomfort never really mattered as much as keeping things smooth. Claire nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on her coffee. I know, I keep asking myself why I did that. And I think I was raised to believe that avoiding conflict was love. That if I could just keep everything fine, that meant we were good. I didn't even realize how much harm that did. That struck me. Avoiding conflict isn't love, but how many of us are taught otherwise? Society rewards women for keeping peace at any cost, but that pressure becomes corrosive when the peace comes at the expense of truth. Maybe we're both guilty of that, I admitted. I stayed quiet for so long too. I told myself it was easier, that if I just swallowed my pride, the storm would pass. But storms don't pass if you keep inviting them in. That conversation didn't end with a solution. There was no dramatic kiss, no neat reconciliation tied up with a bow. Instead, it ended with a quiet agreement we'd take it one day at a time. Separate spaces, shared custody, and real conversations no matter how hard. But the twist came a few days later. Linda reached out not to me but to my brother Lucas. Somehow she'd found his number and left a voicemail dripping with faux civility. Tell Ethan I'm worried about Claire's stability. I think she's unraveling and the children might be better off spending more time with me. After all, I've been a mother longer than she's been a wife. That single message confirmed everything I needed to know. Linda hadn't learned anything. She wasn't capable of respecting boundaries because her very identity depended on erasing them. But more importantly, it showed me that Claire really had begun to change because Claire was the one who forwarded me the voicemail without a word of commentary, just a quiet acknowledgement that this was the woman she'd defended for so long. It wasn't an apology, it was an alignment, finally. That afternoon, standing at the edge of the lake while my children built another fort from sticks and sand, I realized that something fundamental had shifted not between Claire and me, but inside me. For years, I'd thought forgiveness meant returning to the way things were. But standing there in that late autumn sunlight, I understood that forgiveness isn't about returning. It's about release. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is choose not to return. The next morning, I met Claire again, this time, not in a coffee shop, but at the lawyer's office. We sat side by side, calm but certain, as we signed a legal agreement spelling out everything: clearly separate residences, shared custody, financial boundaries, and strict rules about extended family contact. It wasn't an ending as much as a correction. When we walked out of that office, Claire surprised me by reaching for my hand not as a wife trying to reclaim a husband, but as a partner acknowledging the reality we had both created. We may not have saved this marriage, she said softly, but maybe we can save the way we co-parent. And maybe that's enough. I looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel resentment. I didn't feel guilt either. I felt something far more valuable: clarity. Maybe it is, I agreed. That night, back at the lake house, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, listening to the gentle lap of water against the shore. The children were asleep inside, safe and content. The moon reflected on the lake like a clean slate, a symbol as always, but this time not of peace I needed to beg for, but of peace I had claimed. And as I breathed in that cool night air, I knew this was my life now, not the life I thought I wanted years ago, but the one I had earned by finally learning when to stop asking for permission to protect myself. The story wasn't ending here, it was just finally truly mine to write.